The air in the Oakhaven funeral home was thick, with a silence that felt heavier than the humid July heat outside. It was a silence punctuated only by the rustle of somber clothing, the hushed whispers of mourners, and the quiet, choked sobs of Chief Robert Miller's widow, Sarah. They were burying a hero, a man who had dedicated over 3 decades to protecting this town. A man cut down too soon by what the preliminary reports called a massive heart attack. But then, a sound ripped through the forced serenity, a sharp, piercing bark from the back of the room. All heads turned. There, standing stiff and alert, was Diesel, Chief Miller's German shepherd. His fur bristled, his powerful body trembled, eyes fixed on the dark, polished coffin that held his master's body. His barks were raw, desperate, bouncing off the walls, drowning out the priest's solemn prayer and the quiet weeping of the bereaved. Was this just grief, raw and unrestrained, or something far, far more? What primal instinct was driving the loyal police dog to such a frenzy at his handler's final resting place? Before you delve into this extraordinary tale of loyalty, corruption, and resilience, we invite you to subscribe to **K9 code red ***. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you won't miss a single chapter of stories like this. And listen closely, because to truly understand what happened in Oakhaven that day, you need to hear every detail of this unbelievable story. Get that dog out of here. Deputy Chief Thomas Sterling's voice cut through the commotion, red-faced with irritation. Show some respect. Detective Jake Riley watched as 2 uniformed officers tried to drag Diesel away, but the dog was stronger than they expected. He twisted free, a blur of tan and black, and launched himself towards the coffin. Flowers scattered across the floor. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Sarah Miller covered her mouth, trembling. This wasn't just the normal sorrow of a dog losing its master, Riley knew. He'd seen Diesel on crime scenes, seen him alert and focused. This was different. Diesel wasn't just grieving, he was sounding an alarm. In a single desperate leap, Diesel landed on the coffin and began tearing at the silk lining inside. Chaos erupted. People tried to pull him back, but his focus was singular, intense. Then, Detective Riley stepped forward, a cold realization washing over him. For 15 of his 23 years on the force, Riley had served under Chief Miller. Miller had saved him when he was 16, caught shoplifting, and instead of jail, offered him a path, a chance, bringing him home for dinner, introducing him to Sarah, offering community service and check-ins. Miller was the man who had given him his life back, who told him to believe in himself even when others doubted him. He knew Chief Miller, he knew Diesel, and he knew something was terribly wrong. "Wait," Riley shouted. He raised his hand, cutting through the noise. "Open the coffin." Silence fell over the room, heavy and absolute. The only sound was the low, desperate growl of Diesel. What happened next would forever be etched in the memory of everyone present. Deputy Chief Sterling's face was a mask of outrage. "This is preposterous. You're desecrating Chief Miller's memory because of a dog's behavior." Riley ignored him. His focus was on Diesel, whose instincts, honed by years of police work alongside Miller, felt more reliable than the pronouncements of any official at that moment. Rex was trained by Chief Miller himself. He doesn't act like this without a reason. Note: source uses Rex, changing to Diesel as requested, but keeping the source context. Sarah Miller, pale but resolute, her grief momentarily eclipsed by a dawning fearful hope, spoke with a newfound strength. "Ricardo and I always believed Rex had a special sense about things. If Jake feels something is wrong, I support it." Sterling argued, pleaded, claimed she was emotional, but Sarah was firm. "He was my husband. I have the right here. Open the coffin, now." The funeral director, caught between the deputy chief's fury and the widow's unwavering command, hesitated, then nervously moved to unlatch the brass clasps of the casket. Dr. Evelyn Reed, the county medical examiner, who had arrived unexpectedly and seemed as uneasy about the rushed arrangements as Riley, stepped forward, her medical bag in hand, ready to examine whatever was found. She too had felt uneasy about the report of the chief's sudden death, a seemingly healthy man struck down by cardiac arrest without warning. This wasn't normal. The coffin slowly opened. There lay Chief Robert Miller, in his dress uniform, hands folded across his chest. The room held its breath. No one moved, no one spoke. Then, Dr. Reed, guided by her professional training, moved quickly to the side of the coffin. She leaned in, placing 2 fingers on Chief Miller's neck. The silence stretched, seconds feeling like an eternity. Then, her eyes widened in disbelief. "He has a pulse," she announced, her voice loud and clear, cutting through the tension. "Faint, but he's alive." A collective gasp, then shrieks echoed through the room. Sarah cried out, a sound of pure, overwhelming relief and shock, clutching her sister, Brenda Hayes, who had been standing nearby. Officers, stunned, surged forward. Diesel, sensing the shift in energy, barked triumphantly, his tail wagging furiously. "Everyone back." Dr. Reed commanded sharply. "Give him space. Call an ambulance. Fast." Riley, phone already in hand, reported the impossible. His eyes locked onto Deputy Chief Sterling, whose face had gone bloodless. Sterling stood frozen, mouth agape, looking not like someone witnessing a miracle, but like someone confronting his worst nightmare. As the ambulance sirens wailed closer, Dr. Reed quickly examined the chief. She found something disturbing near his uniform collar, a tiny puncture wound, almost invisible, with faint bruising around it. She found another on his arm. Injection sites, Riley realized, a chilling wave washing over him. Someone injected him with something, a chemical, something that mimics death. The sudden rushed funeral, Sterling's strange behavior, the missing files later discovered at Miller's home, it all clicked into place. This wasn't a medical accident. This was attempted murder. Someone had tried to bury Chief Robert Miller alive. Chief Miller was rushed to Oak Haven Hospital, clinging to life. The poison, a rare synthetic chemical designed to slow his metabolism and mimic death, combined with oxygen deprivation from his near burial, left him in critical condition. Detective Riley followed the ambulance, Diesel restless in the back of his patrol car. The sudden visit from Henry Stone, referenced in source as James Marshall at the funeral home, felt connected now. Perhaps he was there to ensure the chief remained in his death-like state. The sounds Riley had heard that night in the funeral home, likely Miller's body fighting the poison. At the hospital, the intensive care unit became a fortress. Monitors beeped steadily, wires connected Miller to life-sustaining machines. Sarah sat by his side, holding his hand. Diesel lay quietly on the floor, a silent, furry guardian. Meanwhile, the investigation began. Officer Emily Carter, a sharp young officer, was coordinating efforts. "Sir," she reported to Riley, "we found Deputy Chief Sterling's patrol car, abandoned at the train station. He's gone." Not a surprise, Riley thought, but damning. His disappearance confirmed Riley's suspicions. Then came another discovery. There was a break-in at the chief's home office, Carter reported. The safe was left open. Mrs. Miller's sister Brenda Hayes said files related to the East Side drug case are missing. The very investigation Miller had been working on, the one rumored to involve high levels of power in Oak Haven, the one Miller had been secretive about, even with Sterling. A brief moment of hope pierced the tension when Chief Miller stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He was weak, disoriented, but he spoke, his voice a raspy whisper. "Bag, jacket pocket." Riley leaned closer, urging him to explain. "Yung suat moni, ilibing ka." The uniform he was wearing when they buried him. That was all Miller could manage before losing consciousness again. Acting on the chief's dying directive, Riley contacted the forensic team at the funeral home. A search of Miller's dress uniform yielded a remarkable discovery, a micro SD card sewn inside the lining of the left jacket pocket. Riley reviewed the contents of the card on a secure laptop. What he found went far beyond Deputy Chief Sterling. Miller had compiled meticulous evidence, financial records, surveillance footage, recordings, exposing a vast network of corruption. It implicated not only Sterling, but also Judge Alan Thompson, a longtime pillar of the community. and even Mayor David Chen. All were connected to a drug cartel, led by the elusive figure known only as King Fisher. Chief Miller hadn't just been investigating a drug syndicate, he had been secretly working with the FBI for nearly a year to expose this deep-rooted corruption that reached the highest levels of Oakhaven. The SD card was the key, the evidence he was planning to hand over at a meeting with the FBI, a meeting someone clearly knew about. The discovery of the SD card and its explosive contents sent shockwaves through the investigation. Riley knew their enemies were aware Miller was alive, and they would be desperate to silence him permanently. The hospital, despite police presence, was no longer a safe haven. His fears were realized when the hospital was plunged into darkness. The emergency generators kicked in, casting long, dancing shadows down the corridors. It wasn't a simple power outage. The radio system went dead, clearly sabotaged. They were isolated. Suddenly, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Riley peered through the small window in Miller's room door. A man in medical scrubs was attacking the uniformed officer posted outside. "Officer Menz," Riley shouted, but it was too late. The officer crumpled, clutching his side. The attacker turned towards the door. Riley reacted instantly. "Diesel, guard," he yelled. Diesel, sensing the immediate threat, sprang to his feet, positioning himself protectively in front of Miller's bed, teeth bared, a low, menacing growl vibrating in his chest. The door burst open. The intruder hesitated for a split second, taken aback by Riley's drawn weapon. It was enough time for Riley to recognize the eyes above the surgical mask, the posture, the familiar form. "Sterling," Riley stated, his voice cold, filled with a bitter certainty. Deputy Chief Thomas Sterling, the man who had rushed the funeral, who had vanished, was here to finish the job. Sterling, blood staining his surgical gloves, spoke, his voice strained but hard. "You don't understand what you're involved in, Riley. This is bigger than Miller, bigger than Oakhaven." He held a glinting scalpel. "Drop it, Sterling. Kneel down now," Riley ordered, his finger steady on the trigger. Sterling laughed, a chilling sound devoid of humor. "You think I'm alone? This whole hospital is ours. You've lost." Gunshots erupted elsewhere in the building, followed by screams. Riley's focus wavered for just an instant, long enough. Sterling lunged, the scalpel aimed at Riley's throat. Riley stumbled back, firing his weapon. The bullet struck Sterling's shoulder, spinning him away, crashing into medical equipment. Pain twisted his face, but he didn't fall. Before Riley could recover, Sterling was on him, tackling him to the floor. The scalpel descended, the sharp blade closing in on Riley's eye. Riley fought, gripping Sterling's wrist, the blade trembling between them, inches from his face. "You shouldn't have interfered," Sterling snarled. "Miller should have died peacefully. Now you'll both suffer." Then, a flash of tan and black fur. Diesel launched himself into the struggle, his powerful jaws closing around Sterling's arm. A shriek of agony ripped from the deputy chief as his grip on the scalpel broke. Riley seized the opportunity, a sharp kick to Sterling's side, then a swift punch to his temple. Sterling slumped, disoriented. Riley scrambled up, retrieving his gun. "Diesel, stay," he commanded, the dog still gripping Sterling's arm. Just then, the door burst open again. This time, it wasn't police. A tall man in an expensive suit stood there. He held a heavy oxygen tank like a weapon. "Finish it," he ordered Sterling, his voice calm, devoid of emotion. It was Henry Stone, the man from the funeral home. King Fisher. Diesel, seeing the new threat, lunged. King Fisher swung the oxygen tank with brutal precision. The sound of impact filled the room. A pained yelp from Diesel, and he collapsed, injured but alive. King Fisher approached Miller's bed, syringe in hand. "A lethal dose, make it look natural," he instructed Sterling. "Cardiac arrest from complications. No one should doubt it." Riley, struggling to rise, recognized the voice. Refined, with a slight accent, it was Stone, King Fisher, the elusive head of the cartel. "Just business," Stone said, pulling the cap from the syringe, a slight smile playing on his lips. Seemingly surprised, Riley was still conscious. "Don't take it too personally, Detective." Sterling's boot was on Riley's chest, the scalpel at his throat. "And him?" Sterling asked, pointing at the unconscious Miller. "Same complications," Kingfisher replied coolly. As the syringe neared Miller's arm, a weak, struggling cough echoed in the room. Diesel, despite the blood on his fur and the pain, pushed himself up. His eyes held fierce determination. Trembling, he gathered his last strength and lunged again, this time at Kingfisher. Chaos erupted. Riley used the distraction, a sharp elbow to Sterling's knee. The deputy chief cried out in pain, losing balance. Riley grabbed for his gun. At that exact moment, the door slammed open. Police officers, led by Officer Carter, flooded the room, weapons drawn. "Police, don't move," Carter yelled. But Kingfisher was faster. Instead of injecting Miller, he plunged the syringe into Sterling's neck. Sterling's eyes widened in shock and betrayal. "You promised," he choked out, convulsing. Kingfisher shoved Sterling towards the arriving officers, using him as a shield as he retreated towards a window. Confusion reigned. Sterling collapsed, body racked by convulsions, but Kingfisher, even facing capture, showed no fear. From inside his jacket, he drew a small handgun. He glanced at the window, his escape route. Adrenaline surged through Riley, despite his injuries. He saw Kingfisher's intent. "Gun," he shouted, instinctively covering Diesel. 2 shots fired in quick succession. For a moment, Kingfisher seemed unaffected. He stood for a few seconds, then his body tilted. A dark stain spread rapidly across his expensive suit. Carter's bullet had found its mark. But before he fell, he got off a shot. A searing heat tore through Riley's shoulder. A violent force knocked him down. He hit the floor, weak, his vision blurring. Around him, officers subdued Kingfisher, while medical staff rushed into the room. Amidst the chaos, he heard voices calling his name. Nearby, despite his pain, Diesel crawled towards him. "The dog, save the dog," Riley murmured weakly before losing consciousness. Kingfisher Henry Stone was apprehended, injured, while Deputy Chief Sterling died from the poison. Riley woke to the steady beep of monitors and the sterile smell of antiseptic. His body was heavy, his mind foggy from painkillers. Memories flooded back. Sterling's attack, Kingfisher, Diesel, he croaked, his voice rough. "He's alive," Sarah Miller said softly, sitting by his bed, weary but calm. She helped him drink water. Diesel had broken ribs and a head injury, but the vet was confident he'd recover. He was at a clinic in the next town. A weight lifted from Riley's chest. "The chief?" he asked weakly. "Stable," Sarah replied, "but critical. The doctors are hopeful. He woke briefly yesterday, asked for Rex. Note, source mentions Rex here, keeping the source context. Yesterday, Riley realized he'd been unconscious for nearly 36 hours. The bullet had gone through his shoulder, and he'd lost a lot of blood. And Sterling, Riley asked, the name a bitter taste. Sarah's face grew serious. Dead. Whatever was in that syringe worked fast. Kingfisher, undergoing surgery. He'll live to face charges. Sarah then revealed something that stopped Riley cold. Judge Thompson, she said. Judge Alan Thompson, the man who had presided over their wedding. His name came up in documents with Mayor Chen. Mayor David Chen had been arrested that morning. The FBI had been building a case for a long time. Chief Miller had been working with them, a judge and a mayor, bought by a cartel. Sarah murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. Money buys a lot, Riley replied, thinking of the lavish lifestyles men like Thompson and Chen must have enjoyed. Officer Carter entered, looking tired but relieved Riley was awake. Sir, the FBI has taken over the case, she reported. So far, 17 people arrested, including 3 from our department and the county commissioner. The depth of the network Miller had uncovered was staggering. Thompson is cooperating, Carter added. He claims Sterling was the main connection to the cartel. He brought Thompson and Chen in for legal and political protection. and the attempt on the chief, that was Sterling's plan. He knew too much. Thompson says he got the poison through his cartel connections. Carter hesitated before delivering the next piece of information. Sir, they found something else in Judge Thompson's office. A burial plot plan. Your name was on it. A chill snaked down Riley's spine. He'd suspected they wanted him dead, but seeing it in print, and there's more, Carter continued, her voice lower. The toxicology results for Chief Miller came back. The poison was given to him slowly, in small doses, probably in his coffee. Traces were found in the station break room coffee maker. The target wasn't just Miller's death, but destroying his reputation and anyone close to him, who had access to the break room. Riley asked, his mind racing. Everyone in the department, Carter replied. But they changed the coffee maker 3 months ago. Only a few people knew what exact brand of coffee the chief liked. You, Sterling, the chief's assistant, and Sarah. Riley's eyes met Sarah's. Sarah paled. I couldn't do that, she whispered, horrified. Not you, Riley said softly. Your sister. She's been living with you since before Ricardo got sick. Sarah stared at him, confused. Linda. But why? Note, source mentions Sarah's sister Linda here, changing to Brenda Hayes as requested, but keeping the source context. Carter's expression was grim. We followed her bank transactions, she received payments, and she's been in a relationship with Thompson for about a year. She kept it secret because of his position and her connection to your family. Sarah's coffee cup slipped from her trembling fingers, splashing across the floor. She covered her face, shock, disbelief, and betrayal written in her eyes. She made sure she brought Ricardo his coffee every day, she whispered, heartbroken. She said it was our little ritual to show we cared for him, especially when he was stressed. The hospital alarms blared, ripping through the raw emotional moment. Emergency call to the ICU. A voice boomed. Miller. Riley's heart leaped into his throat. Despite his injury, he tried to get up, wincing in pain. Sarah was already running. Ricardo. Riley ignored the tearing pain in his shoulder, the dizziness. If Kingfisher's accomplices were still free, Miller was still in danger, and a chilling thought struck him. If Brenda Hayes was involved with Thompson and Sterling, she would know the hospital's security, the guard schedules. As family, she had unrestricted access. Carter, Riley yelled, struggling towards the door. We need to find Brenda Hayes. Now, in the ICU, he reached the observation glass outside Miller's room. Doctors and nurses swarmed inside, faces grim. A crash cart was wheeled in. CPR was being performed on Miller's motionless body. Sarah stood beside the glass, pale, devastated, hand pressed against the pane. What happened? Riley asked a nurse, his voice tight with panic. He just stopped breathing, she replied, rushing back inside. There were no signs of trouble just a moment ago. Riley scanned the hallway, desperate, searching for Brenda Hayes. She wasn't there. Had she escaped? Or was she hiding, watching the result of her actions? Linda was just here, Sarah said faintly, her voice hollow. She said she'd sit with him, so I could get some air. She brought coffee for the guard. The realization hit them both simultaneously. Another dose. Carter returned from her search, face grim. She's not on this floor. Security is checking all exits. Inside the room, the medical team continued their desperate efforts. Clear, the doctor shouted. Miller's body arched as the defibrillator shocked him. Then a beep from the monitor. Another. Gradually, a faint, irregular rhythm returned. He's back, someone yelled. Sarah sobbed with relief, but the reprieve was short-lived. A doctor emerged, mask lowered, bringing grave news. Mrs. Miller, we've stabilized your husband, but he's in extremely critical condition, he announced. He appears to have been poisoned again, with the same chemical. But, Sarah stammered, clutching Riley's arm. The first poisoning caused significant damage, the doctor explained heavily. His body is weaker now, it's struggling to fight off this second attack. Riley felt a surge of desperation. Isn't there anything else you can do? The doctor hesitated. There's another option, an experimental treatment. It's more aggressive, with significant risks, but it might counteract the poison more effectively. Do it, Sarah said firmly. Mrs. Miller, you need to understand. This treatment could save him, but it might also be too much for his system, and if he survives, there's a possibility of severe brain damage due to the double poisoning. What does that mean? Riley asked, dreading the answer. He might not wake up with his mind fully intact, the doctor explained softly. Or if he does, there could be significant cognitive impairment. We can't guarantee the outcome. Sarah closed her eyes tightly. When they reopened, her resolve was clear. Ricardo is a fighter. He never gives up, no matter the battle. Do everything you can to save him. The doctor nodded grimly and returned to the ICU. Officer Carter's radio crackled. After listening, she turned to Riley. New development. Linda Hayes has been found in the parking lot. We have her in custody. I need to see her, Sarah stated, her voice cold. Carter hesitated. I don't recommend it. She's my sister, and she poisoned my husband. I need to know why, Sarah insisted, her resolve unshakable. Understanding Sarah's desperate need for answers, Riley supported her. Bring her to the security office. We'll meet you there. In the harsh fluorescent light of the security office, Brenda Hayes sat handcuffed, tears streaming down her face. Her expensive clothes looked out of place. When Sarah entered, Brenda's fragile control shattered. Sarah, I swear, I didn't know their whole plan. I thought he'd just be forced to retire, she sobbed. You poisoned him, Sarah said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. You came into our home and poisoned my husband, repeatedly. Brenda slumped, defeat in her posture. Thompson convinced me it wouldn't hurt him, just enough to cause stress symptoms, so he'd step down, she explained. I just thought I was protecting us from the scandal of a judge involved in corruption. You're saying, Riley interrupted, his gaze sharp. You don't know how hard it is to live paycheck to paycheck. Brenda shot back, bitterness in her voice. Collins promised a way out, a comfortable, secure life, in exchange for helping the cartel in this city. And yes, poisoning my own brother-in-law. Her voice trembled. When Ricardo didn't retire, Thompson said a stronger dose was needed, just enough to hospitalize him. But yesterday, Sterling suddenly changed the plan, and you made it worse, she accused Riley bitterly. Brenda broke down, guilt and fear on her face. Sterling threatened my son. He said if I didn't give Ricardo the lethal dose today, Tommy would be next. What else could I do? She wailed. Sarah stared at her sister, seeing a stranger. Why didn't you ask for my help, or call the police? What would I say? That someone poisoned me and report it to the police chief, who's your husband? Confess I was an accomplice to a judge with drug syndicate connections? Brenda laughed bitterly, a sound without humor. There was nowhere to run. A knock on the door interrupted the tense confrontation. Dr. Reed entered, her face grave. Detective, Mrs. Miller, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's an urgent issue with Chief Miller. A cold dread gripped Riley. What's wrong? The new treatment, it's caused a severe reaction. His kidney function is failing rapidly, and the latest brain scan shows, she paused, looking at Sarah, significant damage to his frontal and temporal lobes. Sarah gasped, covering her mouth. What does that mean? He might wake up not recognizing you, or unable to remember his life and work. His personality could be permanently altered. Riley felt the weight of it all. Chief Miller, the man who saved him, his mentor, the pillar of integrity for the department. He might survive, but not be the man they knew. Dr. Reed continued, adding to the crushing news. Rex was brought in for a checkup this morning too. He's showing concerning symptoms. The head injury was worse than we thought. The vet says the damage might be long-term. Hernandez, Rex, the corruption tearing the town apart, it was too much. Riley's vision blurred. He felt the pain and fatigue from his own wound. Detective Dr. Reed's voice seemed distant. Sit down before you fall. He didn't resist as she helped him to a chair. In the back of his mind, he heard Sarah's quiet, continuous sobs. Brenda sat stiffly, silently, the full weight of her decisions finally hitting her. Sarah finally broke the silence. I need to be with Ricardo. I understand, Dr. Reed said gently, but there's another critical decision to be made. We have very few of these specialized dialysis machines, and both Chief Miller and Detective Riley need immediate treatment. Riley understood instantly. Give it to the chief. No, Sarah protested fiercely. You were shot. You need treatment too. I'll be all right, Riley insisted. The pain in his shoulder was worsening, but he couldn't put himself before Chief Miller. Dr. Reed looked unconvinced. Detective, your lab results are back. You show signs of early kidney damage from blood loss and the medication you're on. If you delay treatment, it might not be reversible. Miller needs it more, Riley said firmly, cutting off further argument. As Sarah was led back to the ICU, Riley was left with Brenda Hayes. A heavy silence filled with unspoken questions settled between them. Finally, Riley spoke. Was it worth it? Everything Thompson promised you. Linda stared at her hands. I didn't think it would end like this. It always ends like this, Riley replied, weary. Every deal with the devil leads to tragedy. Outside, night fell over Oak Haven. Police cars surrounded the hospital, their lights flashing silently. The department was shattered, its leadership compromised, public trust broken. Chief Miller had dedicated his life to building a decent institution, only for it to be destroyed from within. The next hours passed in a blur of pain and fading consciousness. Riley refused painkillers, determined to stay alert despite his body's protests. Reports came in sporadically. 3 more arrests linked to Thompson and the cartel. Crucial evidence found in Miller's hidden documents. The FBI taking full control of the police station. By midnight, Riley was feverish. The infection in his wound worsened despite treatment. Every breath was a struggle, every movement agony. Still he refused dialysis. The chief's condition is worse, he insisted. You're stubborn, Dr. Reed told him during one of his clearer moments. You might be considered a hero, but ultimately you're being foolish. How is Rex? Riley asked, ignoring her comment. Better than you, she replied. A nurse rushed in, face etched with worry. Doctor, we need you in the chief's room immediately. His oxygen levels are dropping. Dr. Reed hurried out, leaving Riley to his thoughts. Lying there staring at the ceiling, he couldn't help but wonder. After everything they'd done, the arrests, the sacrifices, even Diesel's warning, could Miller still be lost? All night, as his condition deteriorated, Riley faced a painful truth. Maybe everything they did was in vain. Sometimes, no matter how right your decisions are, they can't heal the deep wounds left by betrayal. As the faint light of dawn filtered through the blinds in Oak Haven Hospital, Riley drifted in and out of consciousness. Each waking moment brought fresh pain and a constant dread for Miller. The silence of the night was a bad sign. He knew from years on the force that good news travels fast. Silence often carried grief. A soft knock woke him from his restless sleep. Dr. Reed entered with a distinguished man with silver hair, dressed in a sharp suit. Detective Riley, the man said directly. I'm Special Agent Thomas Reynolds from the FBI. He looked at Dr. Reed, then back at Riley. Dr. Reed tells me you're refusing immediate treatment. That stops now. Riley tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. Chief Miller needs it more than I do. Chief Miller is being cared for by a specialized medical team that arrived from the city over an hour ago, Dr. Reed added. They brought additional equipment, federal resources. Riley paused, processing this. You sent specialists for Miller. Why? Reynolds looked at him, assessing him. Because he's been working with us on this case for almost a year, he replied. And because we value dedicated officer. Dr. Reed's expression softened slightly. He's in a more stable condition now. They've administered a sophisticated antidote to the poison. His kidney function is showing signs of recovery, but the effect on his brain, that's still uncertain. Riley let out a shaky breath. At least there was hope. What about Diesel? Riley asked. The K-9 officer is also receiving specialized treatment, Reynolds replied. He seems to have played a critical role in this case. Riley nodded, relief mixing with caution about the FBI's sudden involvement. What are you really doing here, Agent Reynolds? Reynolds exchanged a look with Dr. Reed, who nodded and left the room. When they were alone, the agent pulled a chair close to Riley's bed. What I'm about to tell you is highly confidential, Reynolds began. Normally, you wouldn't be part of this briefing, but these are not normal times." He paused, choosing his words carefully. Chief Miller wasn't just investigating a local drug syndicate. He uncovered evidence linking the Oakhaven cartel to a global organization involved in funding terrorism. Riley processed the information in silence. It suddenly became clear why the attack on Miller was so intense, why Thompson and Chen were involved. The network he uncovered went far beyond the city limits. When he realized how deep the corruption ran in Oakhaven, he approached us, Reynolds continued. For the past 7 months, he's been secretly gathering evidence while pretending to investigate a standard drug operation. The pieces clicked into place in Riley's mind. Sterling suspected him, he said aloud. Now he understood the timing of the attempted murder. Correct, Reynolds confirmed. Miller was supposed to meet with our team last Thursday to hand over the complete evidence package that would lead to arrests in 3 states, but someone knew about the meeting. That's why Sterling executed the backup plan. Riley's mind raced, putting the new information together, but something doesn't add up. If Miller was your man on the inside, why wasn't he given tighter protection? Where were you when he was being targeted with poison? Reynolds shifted slightly, looking uncomfortable. Chief Miller himself insisted on complete secrecy for his operation. His suspicions were correct. The corruption extended to different agencies. He refused any protection, electronic communication, or even regular check-ins. So you left him vulnerable, Riley stated, bitterness in his voice. We didn't abandon him, Reynolds clarified. Chief Miller is an experienced investigator. He knew the risks of what he was doing. We chose to respect his approach. A sudden thought struck Riley. Did Sarah know about Miller's connection to the FBI? No, Reynolds replied, looking away. It was crucial to keep his mission absolutely secret. Miller protected his wife by not telling her anything. Riley's chest tightened with the weight of the situation. For nearly a year, Miller had carried this burden alone. He couldn't trust anyone. He couldn't even share his fears with his own family. His isolation in this fight felt heavier than any physical wound. There's one more thing, Reynolds added, pulling something from his jacket. A small USB drive, similar to the SD card found on Miller's body. Is this a duplicate? Riley asked. No, Reynolds replied. This contains different information, specifically, information related to you. Riley's eyes narrowed slightly, confused. What do you mean? Miller wasn't just gathering evidence against the cartel, Reynolds explained. He also created a countermeasure for you. He took a deep breath. To protect you from fake accusations. Thompson and Sterling had a plan in place. They fabricated bank statements, testimony, and even doctored photos to make it look like you were an accomplice of the syndicate. The evidence was very convincing, enough to convince anyone. Riley felt a wave of cold realization. It was like a bucket of ice water had been dumped on him. They were setting me up, he said. If Miller had died, he would have fallen into their trap and been arrested right after the funeral. Riley paused, feeling the magnitude of the conspiracy. They didn't just want to kill Miller, they wanted to destroy the reputation of his closest ally on the force. A clean sweep, just like the ominous meaning of their operation's name. Why are you telling me all this now? Riley asked, his gaze sharp, directed at Reynolds. Reynolds leaned forward, lowering his voice. Because we need you. Even though we've made a lot of arrests, we suspect there are remaining cartel accomplices here in Oakhaven. People we haven't identified yet. Before Riley could respond, the door opened. A nurse entered, pushing a wheelchair. In it sat an unexpected visitor. Diesel. He had bandages and supports, but his eyes were alert. When he saw Riley, his ears perked up, and he gave a low whine, expressing his anxiety. The nurse explained that Diesel was restless in his kennel, so the vet recommended bringing him to Riley to calm him down. Despite his injury, Diesel tried to stand. Determined, Riley reached out his hand, and Diesel immediately pressed his nose into it, seeking confirmation. "Hello, buddy," Riley said softly, affection in his voice. "You did good." Reynolds watched the reunion, clearly impressed. "That dog saved 2 lives today. Remarkable." "3, if you count me," Riley replied. He stopped Sterling before he could finish me off. As Diesel settled beside Riley's bed, a commotion erupted in the hallway, loud voices and hurried footsteps. Reynolds stood up instantly, reaching for his concealed weapon. Moments later, Officer Carter burst in, looking animated. "Detective, he's awake. Chief Miller is awake, and he's asking for you." Riley tried to get up quickly, a fierce need to see his chief surging through him, but his body protested. "Too weak, too sore. Take me to him," he commanded, struggling. "You can barely stand," Reynolds protested. "I don't care. Carry me if you have to. I need to see him." Minutes later, Riley was being pushed in a wheelchair towards the ICU. Diesel, limping slightly but determined, followed close beside him. Inside the room, Sarah sat by Miller's bedside, holding his hand, her face a mix of worry and joy. And there, propped up by pillows, still connected to machines, was Chief Robert Miller, pale, tired, but clearly more alert than before. "Riley," Miller said weakly, his voice barely audible over the monitors. "You look like you were run over by a truck." Riley chuckled slightly, despite the pain. "Look who's talking." Miller shifted his gaze to Diesel, who, despite his injuries, had managed to limp closer to the bed. "Looks like my 2 protectors are in worse shape than I am," Miller said. In that simple exchange, Riley confirmed his most feared hope. There was hope. Despite everything, Miller's true self remained. The poison might have damaged his brain, but it hadn't erased the man they knew and loved. "It's a miracle," Sarah whispered, barely containing her emotions. "The doctors can't believe it. Based on the scans, they expected permanent brain damage." A faint smile touched Miller's lips. "Guess I'm just too stubborn to let some poison mess with my mind." Reynolds, who had quietly followed Riley into the room, stepped forward. "Chief Miller, it's a huge relief to see you awake. We have a lot to discuss when you're stronger." Miller's expression grew cautious. "My wife knows everything," he said. "About your work with the FBI. About the conspiracy." "Yes, she knows the whole truth," Riley confirmed. "And Linda?" Miller asked, looking at Sarah, who winced at the mention of her sister. "In custody," Sarah replied. "She's cooperating, for whatever that's worth." Miller closed his eyes for a moment. "I suspected someone from the inside was involved, but I didn't want it to be her." "None of us wanted that," Sarah said softly. A doctor entered, frowning at the crowd in the room. "The excitement level is too high for a patient in Chief Miller's condition." "Just 2 minutes," Miller said weakly, but firmly. "I need 2 minutes with Detective Riley." Sarah kissed her husband's forehead and left. Reynolds nodded respectfully. Diesel, after being promised by a nurse that he could return soon, reluctantly gave way. Finally, Riley was alone with his mentor. "Before everything went sideways, I left something for you," Miller said suddenly, his voice stronger, using his remaining energy for this important conversation. "The SD card we found," Riley asked, a slight furrow in his brow, wondering what else there could be. "Not just that," Miller breathed, struggling slightly. "There's a key to a safety deposit box at Oakhaven National. Find it at my desk at home. There's a hidden compartment in the right drawer." Riley leaned closer, alert. "What's in the box?" "Proof against our final opponent," Miller said. Riley moved even closer. "You mean you know who's really behind Kingfisher?" Miller nodded slowly. "Thompson and Chen, they were just pawns. The real mastermind of corruption in Oakhaven, he's still free." "Who?" Riley asked, directly. Miller looked him straight in the eye, and the revelation hit Riley like lightning. "County Commissioner Richard Hayes." Riley's eyes widened in disbelief. Commissioner Richard Hayes, the man who had appointed Miller chief 15 years ago. The man who controlled Oakhaven's funds, the champion of police reform. The loudest voice supporting the corruption investigation. "Commissioner Hayes," Riley repeated, unable to believe it. "But he pushed the investigation. He even offered extra resources." "A perfect cover," Miller said, weakly but firmly. "He's controlled everything for years. He's the real insider." Everything slowly aligned in Riley's mind. Hayes had power over county-wide law enforcement. His influence reached state levels. If Miller was right, everything they had uncovered was just a small part of a much larger conspiracy. The box contains solid evidence, Miller continued, stressing its importance. Account numbers, recordings of meetings, direct connections to cartel leaders. Everything needed to bring him down. Why didn't you give it to the FBI? Riley asked. Miller's mouth twitched. I didn't know who I could trust. Hayes' connections run deep. I kept you out of the loop as long as I could, to protect you. From his bed, Miller reached out and gripped Riley's hand with unexpected strength. Now, we finish this. Hayes doesn't know I'm alive, or that we have the evidence against him. We only have one chance to end this. Riley nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. I'll get the key today. Be careful, Miller warned. If Hayes suspects you're after him, he won't hesitate to act. Remember, he already tried to kill us once. Almost simultaneously, Riley's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, then looked back at Miller. Speak of the devil, he murmured. Commissioner Hayes just arrived at the hospital and wants to see you. Riley and Miller exchanged a meaningful look. Their final confrontation had arrived sooner than expected. Let him in, Miller said steadily. Whatever happens today, this ends now. Riley adjusted himself in his wheelchair, the pain that had bothered him moments ago forgotten. Miller had risked everything to expose the corruption. Diesel had nearly died protecting them. Now, the responsibility to finish the mission rested on him. As he waited for Hayes, Riley realized that despite all the tragedy, this might just bring them victory. Miller was alive. The truth was coming out. Justice, long delayed, was finally within reach. County Commissioner Richard Hayes entered the hospital, surrounded by a small entourage and security, radiating an aura of authority. Despite the early hour, he was immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit. His 60-year-old frame was erect and confident. For decades, he had been seen as a pillar of integrity in Oak Haven, which made Miller's revelations all the more unbelievable. Riley was positioned outside Miller's room in his wheelchair, as instructed by Dr. Reed. Agent Reynolds stood nearby, pretending to review papers, but his attention missed nothing. Diesel, to his clear displeasure, had been returned to the vet clinic. Detective Riley, Hayes called out, his deep, polished voice filled with feigned concern. I rushed over as soon as I heard about the chief's miraculous recovery. Riley nodded, studying the man he had once respected, now doubted completely. It is indeed a miracle, sir, and your prompt arrival to ensure his safety is touching. Hayes placed a hand on Riley's shoulder, a seemingly comforting gesture, but Riley felt the weight of power in the touch. The best in Oak Haven, always ready to step up. Just doing our job, sir. Riley replied, his voice flat. Hayes scanned Riley's condition sharply before looking towards Miller's closed door. Is he able to receive visitors? I'd like to speak with him personally. Doctors are strictly limiting non-essential visitors right now, sir, Riley said carefully. His condition is still delicate. A flicker of annoyance crossed Hayes' face, quickly replaced by a thin smile. I understand, his health comes first. Then he lowered his voice slightly, as if confiding a secret. Between us, I've spoken with the governor. We're planning a special commendation for Chief Miller when he's recovered, and for you too, and your remarkable dog. That's very thoughtful of you, sir, Riley said, recognizing the true motive behind Hayes' words. A man trying to shore up his position before accusations flew. Nothing less for true heroism. Hayes replied, straightening his posture. Perhaps you could convey a message for me. Tell Ricardo I'm working closely with federal authorities to ensure this corruption investigation proceeds without political interference. Make sure he gets that message. Yes, sir, Riley responded, feeling the layers of deception. Hayes paused, and for an instant, the mask of affability slipped. Did Ricardo mention anything about others who might be involved in the scandal, besides those already arrested? Here was the real reason for his visit, not a concerned official, but a man terrified of what Miller might know. He's still too weak, Riley evaded. Right now, his only focus is recovery. Hayes seemed to accept the answer. Of course, please convey my best wishes. I'll visit again when he's stronger. He started to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and one more thing, Detective. I heard you're investigating a safety deposit box linked to this case." A jolt went through Riley's body. The only way Hayes could know about the box was if he had a spy in the police department or was actively monitoring their investigation. "Just standard evidence-gathering procedure, sir," Riley said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I understand," Hayes replied, his smile not reaching his eyes. "I've already told the bank to cooperate fully with you. No need for a warrant." He smiled amiably. "Let me know if you encounter any obstacles." The moment Hayes was out of sight, Reynolds was at Riley's side. "He knows about the box. We need to move now. He's trying to throw us off. He might have someone watching the bank already," Riley replied. Feeling the tension escalate, Reynolds made a quick call, his words clipped and urgent. "We have a team going to Miller's house to retrieve the key, and another group will pose as a diversion at the bank. You need to stay here," Reynolds added. "I won't allow it," Riley argued, his voice heated. "Miller entrusted this to me, not the FBI. You're not fit to move," Reynolds insisted. "Then give me crutches." 2 hours later, despite his fierce resistance, Riley found himself positioned inside a nondescript FBI surveillance van 3 blocks from Oak Haven National Bank. Reynolds had compromised, given his condition. "Team 1 in position," a voice crackled over the radio. "We've secured Miller's house and have the key. Status of Team 2, approaching the bank. Ready to initiate diversion any time," came the reply. From inside the van, Riley watched the bank's main entrance on the surveillance feed. 4 men were visible outside, not ordinary security guards, but clearly professionals. "Hayes's men," Riley murmured. Reynolds nodded. "The commissioner's people are ready too. He doesn't want any mistakes. Everything is riding on this. His career, his freedom, his life. Someone as desperate as Hayes is even more dangerous," Riley whispered. The radio crackled again. "Key team 5 minutes from target. Ready to implement diversion. Go," Reynolds ordered. Riley watched the screen as a dark SUV, with government plates pulled up to the bank entrance. 6 agents in FBI jackets exited, deliberate, establishing their presence. Hayes' guards reacted instantly. 2 began speaking quickly into radios, while the others blocked the agent's path. "Diversion is successful," Reynolds said. "Time for the real operation." On the side of the bank, a team in civilian clothes, driving unmarked vehicles, approached. With them was a slender woman carrying what looked like ordinary bank papers. "That's Agent Chin," Reynolds introduced her. "One of our smartest agents. She'll go in and retrieve the contents of the safety deposit box." While Hayes' guards were distracted by the frontal assault, Agent Chin and her team slipped into the bank's side entrance unnoticed. 20 minutes passed, the diversion team maintaining their pretense of serving a warrant, a complex legal game to keep Hayes' men focused on them. Finally, the silence on the radio broke. "Item retrieved. Contents are secure." Exiting via the northeast exit, Agent Chin reported calmly. Riley took a slow, deep breath, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. "What's next?" Reynolds smiled, reaching for his phone. "I think it's time Chief Miller himself made a call," from the hospital. Despite his weakness, Chief Miller was ready for his part of the plan. He summoned his remaining strength for what might be the most important call of his life. Riley and Reynolds listened in silence as he dialed Hayes' private number. It rang for a moment before Hayes answered, his voice tinged with surprise when he heard Miller's voice. "Just wanted to give you the news personally," Miller said directly. "I'm recovering." Hayes' reply sounded genuinely relieved. "That's excellent news, Ricardo. The doctor said you had a chance of a full recovery. I'm so glad to hear it." "Glad to hear it, or surprised?" Miller's tone was probing. "For your unwavering dedication over the years," Hayes replied. "And I was thinking about our last conversation about protecting our legacy." He paused, emphasizing his words. "I'm not sure I follow, my friend," Hayes replied, sounding hesitant. "Those talks we had, about investments, offshore accounts," Miller continued. "I'm a little concerned about some documents that might have been uncovered during my disappearance." The silence stretched, an eternity for Riley. When Hayes finally replied, his voice was barely a whisper, laced with caution. "What are you implying, Ricardo?" "Nothing," Miller said. Just letting you know there are a few details I kept hidden. Details that could cause trouble for both of us if they surface. I understand, Hayes said, clearly guarded now. Where is this information now? It's safe. For now, Miller replied. But I'm worried about Riley. He's digging too deep, asking questions he shouldn't be asking. Has he found anything? Hayes asked, his voice tight. He doesn't have concrete evidence yet, Miller said, but he found out about the C-Man account. The line went silent again. At this point, Riley felt the full weight of the tension. Finally, Hayes broke the silence. I'll handle Riley. You just focus on getting better. We'll talk again, privately. The call ended, and Reynolds couldn't hide a grim smile. We got him. He directly admitted his part in the conspiracy. Add that to the evidence we retrieved from the safety deposit box. It's enough for an arrest warrant. He'll target me first, Riley said quietly, but firmly. Right, Reynolds confirmed. He'll take the bait. It's part of the plan. Over the next 3 days, the trap for Hayes was carefully built. Riley was officially discharged from the hospital in the eyes of the public. He went home, but in reality, he was moved to a secure location. Meanwhile, they monitored Hayes's increasingly desperate communications, all legally authorized. On the night of the 3rd day, Hayes made his move. Not himself, of course. Instead, he sent skilled hitmen. They approached Riley's seemingly empty house. They easily bypassed the security system and entered silently, armed and ready. They searched room by room, careful and methodical, but they weren't expecting what happened next. A flashbang grenade exploded, blinding them with light and deafening them with noise. In seconds, from hidden positions, an FBI tactical team emerged. There were no shots fired. The attackers were quickly and cleanly apprehended. Examination of their cell phones and financial records confirmed their connection to Commissioner Hayes. Early the next morning, Hayes was arrested at his lakeside home. Agents confronted him with the irrefutable evidence from Miller's safety deposit box. Financial ledgers showing large payments from a drug cartel, encrypted messages about smuggling routes, and direct orders to assassinate Chief Miller and Detective Riley. News of Commissioner Hayes's arrest spread quickly, sending shockwaves not only through Oak Haven but across the state. In the following days, 6 more officials were apprehended. A vast network of corruption was exposed, reaching into state offices, the county prosecutor's office, and even the regional district attorney's task force. The conspiracy was wider and more intricate than anyone had imagined. Weeks later, not as an ending, but a new beginning for Chief Robert Miller. He was finally discharged from the hospital. He still needed physical therapy and ongoing medical care, but his recovery far surpassed the doctor's expectations. Sarah was always by his side, their relationship strengthened by the ordeal. Riley's recovery was slower. His kidney function had declined slightly due to his prolonged delay in treatment. He sighed, accepting this reality. A lifelong reminder of the case, much like the scar Hayes's corruption had left on Oak Haven. But Diesel, as always, was the fastest to bounce back. Only 3 weeks had passed, yet he showed little sign of pain, save for a slight limp. Despite the vet's advice to rest, his spirit was clearly undimmed. On a sunny morning, 6 weeks after Miller's unexpected recovery, a simple ceremony was held at the mayor's office. Not Mayor Chen, who was awaiting trial, but an interim mayor, a respected community leader, with no ambition beyond guiding the town through its crisis. The commendation for extraordinary courage and dedication to duty was read as Miller pinned the department's highest honor onto Riley's uniform. His movements were slow, but certain. Their handshake was firm, and in the brief moment their eyes met, more was communicated than words could convey. I couldn't have done this without you, Miller said softly. And without Diesel, Riley replied. Glancing at his loyal companion, a slight smile on his face, Riley looked at Diesel. The German shepherd sat proudly, wearing a medal specially made for him. After the ceremony, the group walked to Oak Haven Park. Miller used a cane, while Riley walked carefully. Diesel ran energetically between them. Sarah was waiting at a picnic table, a small celebration prepared. Ricardo might be back on limited duty next month, Sarah told Riley, watching Miller and Diesel play fetch. Each throw of the ball was a small but significant victory. Does he even want to come back? Riley asked. After everything that had happened, Sarah paused for a moment before answering. He believes Oak Haven deserves a new beginning. Leadership without corruption, she said, smiling faintly. But he also believes he can't just leave the department to anyone. Riley looked up, slightly surprised. He's recommending you as the next chief. When he retires, Sarah confirmed. He trusts you to rebuild everything the right way. Riley felt the weight of Miller's trust. It was immense but not daunting. Just 2 months ago, if someone had asked him if he was ready for this responsibility, he would have said no immediately. But after everything they had been through, the betrayal, the fight against corruption, the near loss of his mentor and his own life, his perspective had changed. Oak Haven needed to rise again, and perhaps he was the one to lead that change. As the afternoon light filtered through the leaves of the trees, Miller joined them at the table. Diesel lay at his feet, content in the presence of his family. Their conversation naturally turned to the future. Police reform, rebuilding public trust, the long but essential process of their community healing. "We can do this," Miller stated, his voice full of quiet confidence. One honest step at a time. Riley watched Sarah and Miller, their hands clasped, while Diesel leaned against his master's leg. In different ways, this family exemplified the true meaning of loyalty. A trust once shattered, now being rebuilt. In the distance, church bells chimed, but this time, not as a sign of mourning, but as a clear and simple message, a new beginning for their town. As we grow older, we often think about what true wealth in life is: loyalty, trust, and the relationships that serve as our foundation amidst the darkest trials. Sometimes, wisdom comes from unexpected places, like Diesel, whose unwavering stand saved his master when the people who should have been trustworthy failed. This story is for those who have experienced their trust broken in the institutions they worked hard to build, in the leaders who should have led with integrity, but who still believe in the resilience of the human spirit. It shows the challenges we face: health struggles, profound betrayal, and the quiet courage of standing firm in what is right, even when it would be easier to give up. For anyone who has dedicated decades to caring for something important, a job, a family, or a community, Chief Miller's story reminds us that our efforts have value, even when faced with danger. True strength is not measured by never falling, but by the ability to rise every time, supported by the people who never lost faith in us, even when we thought there was no hope left. We hope this story has inspired you today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments section. See you next time.